Hello there, good evening. You're watching London Live News at 6 with Anthony Baxter. Coming up tonight, the cost of replacing waking watches in unsafe tower blocks is revealed. We'll look at the borough with the highest number of buildings that have required new fire safety measures since Grenfell. We'll have the fallout from last night's cancelled Rwanda flight. The move has led to anger from some Conservative MPs and more criticism of the policy from the Mayor and Labour. It's going to stay hot out there this evening and it's going to get even warmer, the forecast on the way in 10. Plus, we'll explain why our reporter Tom has been to the tailor this week. He's not suited and booted with nowhere to go. And being trapped in the toilet with the Queen, the unlikely scenario that's led to a new stage play starring Charlie Kondo. All of that to come. First, though, this evening, new figures show more than £7 million worth of grants have been given to Londoners living in buildings suspected of having unsafe cladding and materials. Stats from City Hall show more than 1,000 tower blocks in the capital require so-called waking watches because of fire safety concerns. The grants aim to help residents replace wardens with alarms. London Live's Alicia Edwards is here. Just remind us, Alicia, of what this waking watch system means.
Well, it's basically a fire safety watch, meaning that there's a trained member of staff on hand at all times, particularly overnight, keeping watch on the building, patrolling the floors and the outside of the building to make sure that everybody inside is safe. Now, the Waking Watch Relief Fund was set up to pay for the costs of installing technology, installing alarms, which would replace the need to have the people there watching the buildings. It was launched last year, and the idea is that these systems would actually be safer and obviously more efficient. The increase in having these wardens patrolling the buildings came in the wake of the Grenfell Tower fire 5 years ago, and since then there has been a significant increase in the number of buildings that are needing to have this level of security. The stats from City Hall, which we now have, show that 1,100 buildings in London have needed this level of patrolling, meaning that they either have the dangerous flammable cladding or other safety issues which put them at risk. Borough by borough, Tower Hamlets is by far the highest with 165 buildings that come under this. Southwark's next with 94, Hackney have 87 and Greenwich also have 73 buildings, so they're the top four. And those numbers were released after a question to the Mayor by London Assembly member Anne Clark. This comes as just last month, London Fire Brigade Commissioner Andy Rowe said himself that it's extremely concerning the number of buildings that have these serious fire safety failings, being at more than 1,000, and that it's vitally important that people feel safe in their own homes and have certainty about leaving their building in the event of a fire or another emergency.
OK, Alicia Edwards there, 5 years on from the Grenfell disaster. Many people living in those buildings probably still feeling like the pace of change not quick enough. Let's move on. One or two other stories. Labour has called the government's plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda as a shambles after a court intervened in last night's first flight. The UK is still a member of the European Convention of Human Rights, although some Tory MPs have now called to break away following the ruling from Strasbourg. Speaking in the Commons, the Shadow Home Secretary said Priti Patel knew the policy was shameful. The Home Secretary said the government would not be deterred in doing the right thing. The Mayor also shared his reaction.
We have many Londoners who were refugees who've gone on to do great things. I think this policy from the government is callous, it is cruel, and as we discovered last night, it's unlawful. British courts have found this to be unlawful. The British Church has found this to be callous and cruel, and now the European Court of Human Rights. By the way, the convention was written by British lawyers. The court was set up by a British government. The genesis of the European Court and the European Convention comes from Winston Churchill. And I think this generation of Tory politicians should understand their history and our country's history. How is it value for money? Put aside the ethics and the humanity, for the Home Secretary to charter a flight for 7 people to go to Rwanda. How's that value for money? It appears only one person is going to go. The money spent for chartering the flight yesterday has been lost. There's money being expended in relation to defending this policy. That money could be spent far more sensibly doing other things.
A man from Leytonstone has been jailed for 35 years after being found guilty of murder and attempted murder. The Old Bailey heard how Mushin Mohammed was involved in 2 shootings in East London, one of which involved Jason Diallo, who was deliberately knocked off his bike with a cart before being shot in the head in November last year. Minutes later, a second man was found nearby with a gunshot wound to his shoulder. Police have been unable to establish a motive for the attacks. A second man, Terrell Joseph, was found guilty of assisting an offender and jailed for 7 years. The Mayor has been in Walthamstow to unveil a new strategy to tackle violence against women and girls. Sadiq Khan visited the town's library that has been used as a training centre for men to become better allies. His plan will focus on more community-based initiatives rather than the criminal justice system, whilst high street venues will use dry cleaners and beauticians, places like that, to act as information points for victims.
I like other victims who decide to report to the police or who decide to file a report. I thought it would be like it was on TV, that you say that you've been raped and there's an investigation and they hand it to the prosecutors and then they charge and then it goes to court and then you have to really hope that it goes well and that's how it would go. And I couldn't have been more wrong, like even a little bit. And it didn't occur to me that prosecutors would opt to not prosecute something like rape, that it would seem optional. For me, every single time we don't seriously investigate and prosecute a rape, when a rape has been reported, we are failing the next person. And we're failing society as a whole by imagining that this is optional. And so fundamentally for me, we need to support every victim who wants to report and make them feel like they can go through the process of being in the criminal justice system in order to see justice. But it's hard and we're not there yet, but we have to get there. But fundamentally, it's about making sure that we're supportive of people when they've disclosed or when somebody talks about rape, and also that you're not okay with jokes about rape, that you are not going to be okay with somebody acting as though it's a completely okay thing to do to drug somebody, all of that. It is so much easier to imagine that somebody would lie about rape than to imagine that somebody would rape.
Network Rail says half of Britain's rail lines will be closed during next week's national strikes. The West Coast main line from London to Scotland will be open at this stage. Staff, though, will walk out on Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday, with services likely to be disrupted for most of the week. Around 4 in 5 trains won't run. Tuesday's industrial action coincides with a tube walkout. The matter was brought up during PMQs.
What would be useful in supporting the UK economy right now would be if the leader of the Labour Party ended his sphinx-like silence about the RMT strikes coming up in the course of the next couple of weeks. Will he now break with his shadow Transport Secretary and denounce Labour's rail strikes?
He's in government.
Just to remind the Prime Minister, he seems to have gone. It's Prime Minister's question, it's not opposition question. Keir Starmer.
He's in government. He could do something to stop the strikes, but he hasn't lifted a finger. I don't want the strikes to go ahead, but he does. He wants, Mr. Speaker, he wants the country to grind to a halt so he can feed off the division.
Part of the exchange there from Prime Minister's questions. 4 London pubs are among 11 across England that have been listed, upgraded or relisted on the advice of Historic England. The organisation says the venue's interiors help tell the story of pubs over centuries and how they reflected society at the time. Prince Alfred in Maida Vale was made a Grade 2 listed building. Catford's Blythe Hill Tavern and the Admiral Vernon in Dagenham were newly listed at Grade 2, and finally the Red Lion in Westminster was relisted. And just take a look at this unexpected item in someone's shopping bag in South London. Thought to be a Dominican tree frog, normally found in the tropics, this little one made it all the way in a bag of bananas to a shop in Sheen. It appeared to have an injured leg. It's been transferred to Heathrow Animal Reception Centre, where he'll be taken care of. The press release suggesting it is a boy. Well, the weather out there is pretty tropical, certainly this evening. It's going to be about 15 or 16 degrees, the overnight low. That is quite sticky, quite humid. Tomorrow, more in the way of sunshine. Once again, we're looking at highs of about 28 degrees. Friday, the peak of this warm spell. Temperatures could get up to as high as 34 degrees. That is not far off the June all-time record of about 35.6. All eyes on whether we make 35 Celsius on Friday. Hot. Still to come. What to wear for Ascot as the 4-day meet continues. We've sent our reporter Tom to see what it takes to blend in or stand out at the royal event. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. Hello there, welcome back. Let's take a look at one or two other stories making headlines this evening. Millions of people have begun receiving payments to help with the cost of living crisis. The government says 8 million households on benefits will get as much as £326 by the end of July, with a second payment in the autumn. All homes in the UK, regardless of how well off they are set to get £400 for help with energy bills this autumn, along with a previously announced £150 council tax rebate. The British Medical Association says many doctors are facing racism in their workplace, with some being overlooked for promotion or forced to change their chosen speciality. The union says a poll of its members revealed 60% of Asian and 57% of black medics felt racism was a barrier to their career progression. The organisation said the problem was wrecking people's lives. NHS England said it was working to improve diversity within senior roles. And a level 2 heat health alert is in place for the capital and large parts of the south of England, with the arrival of this short burst of warm weather. Today has been the warmest day of the year so far, highs of 28 degrees. The heat continuing to build. We could see highs of 34 degrees on Friday. That is close to the all-time June record. The UK Health Security Agency issued its usual reminder in conditions like these to take it easy, particularly if you have underlying health conditions like heart and breathing problems. Well, the warm weather that we are experiencing coincides with a pollution warning from DEFRA, the southeast, under moderate levels of ozone pollution at the moment, and that has arrived as we head into National Clean Air Day, which is tomorrow. A new study shows 97% of properties in the UK are now placed in an area which exceeds WHO levels for at least one of 3 key pollutants. Professor Frank Kelly is from the School of Public Health at Imperial College London and has been part of the team which has created this pollution estimate guide. Good to see you, Professor Kelly. If we may, let's start with the process then of coming up, how we work out which properties fall into which kind of percentile. What did you do to create this project?
So we have a lot of pollution measurements across the UK, but clearly not everywhere, not on every road, not at every house. So though the measurements we have are put into a model, a mathematical model, along with information about the emissions that are created within various towns and cities across the UK, taking into account all the transport emissions, the aeroplane emissions, the train emissions. Everything goes into the model, and then it produces a surface of 3 pollutants: the particles, the gas nitrogen dioxide, and the gas ozone. And from that, you're then able to geocode all locations across the UK. For example, the house that you live in, and we were then able to predict what the pollution is at that particular address.
Yeah, well, I've looked at what mine is, and it's alarming. It's, bright red, 95th percentile. What impact would that have on somebody like me who's not got an underlying health condition? Should I be really worried?
Well, the first thing we should say is that most of the country is in this situation, and that is because the World Health Organization has very recently updated its guidelines for what we should be exposed to or shouldn't be exposed to. And the fact is that the evidence that's been collected over the last 7 or 8 years linking poor air quality with poor health has increased dramatically. So they have reduced the concentration, the safe level that we should be exposed to. And that's why we find ourselves in this situation, that we probably are all breathing too much pollution. And yes, even if you're not unhealthy at this point in time, if you continue doing that for many years, for many decades, then that air pollution will contribute to subsequently to some form of chronic disease.
Yeah, I mean, we need drastic action, really, if we're ever going to look at changing that map, given the fact that at the moment most people live in an area which exceeds at least one of 3 key pollutants. We're a long way off, in that respect, being safe.
Yes, absolutely. So this really emphasizes, especially just, as we come up to Clean Air Day, that we need to do more to protect the quality of our air. it's really it's our modern lifestyle which has led to this situation. We all understand the emissions coming from traffic, but there's lots of other sources of emissions as well. Basically, when we burn any fossil fuel to heat our homes, to cook, to move about the place, we're producing pollution. And most of the days we don't see it, so we don't think about it. But unfortunately, we're breathing a lot of it in, and that's a problem over time. A lot of the pollution which is generated outside by, for example, transport, that can come indoors where, in certain leaky homes. But we also produce a lot of pollution in our homes. So when we cook or when we heat our homes by maybe a gas boiler or a wood-burning stove, when we clean our homes, that produces pollution as well. And again, because we can't see any of this, and usually we don't smell it, we don't understand that the quality of the air really is bad, and we need to change the way we sort of live our lives if we're going to improve this situation.
What's the one thing that you think would make a big difference quite quickly?
A lot of car journeys are less than, I believe it's something like 2 miles. And if people, as long as they're able to, if people drop those short car journeys and walked or cycled, that would make an enormous difference to the amount of pollution which we emit from the transport sector. I know that sounds, crazy, but it is true. We've just got very used to having a vehicle sitting outside our home and using it, for very short journeys. So that is the one thing which would make a big difference.
OK, Professor Frank Kelly from Imperial College London. Good to get your thoughts on that. Tomorrow, of course, National Clean Air Day. Right, let's move on. Something which doesn't emit pollution, or certainly not the type of pollution we've been talking about, horses. Royal Ascot underway, one of this year's biggest horse racing meets. A favourite, of course, for the Queen and the Royal Family, although the Queen's sitting this one out. As the fans from the capital head west, hopefully by train, we sent our reporter Tom Forte to find himself a suitable outfit for a day at the races.
Royal Ascot commences this week with unrestricted crowds returning to the stands for Britain's most popular race meeting. It may be a prestigious horse race, but it's also considered one of the biggest fashion events in the calendar, welcoming over 300,000 visitors, all dressed up in their finest clothes and hats.
We're here at Oliver Brown, one of London's leading tailors and formal wear providers for the Royal Ascot, and I've got a chance to speak to the founder, Kristian Robson, who's going to take me through some of the fashion protocols for the event and also let me try on one of their legendary suits. So let's head on inside.
So I would describe Royal Ascot Week as the biggest part of our year, and if you're a racing man, it's the best racing in the world, and being the Jubilee year, without question, the best year ever. It's been such a defining feat because of the dress codes that you have to wear, and in the Royal Enclosure you have to wear morning coats, top hats and trousers, which is triple check, and a waistcoat which is single or double-breasted, and you never wear that apart from at a wedding or a garden party. It's a very English thing to wear. You only wear it racing. And the nicest thing you can wear that we sell, we've got the biggest collection in the world, is a silk top hat, antique silk top hat, which haven't been made for 80 years. We have over 1,000 antique silk ones. We've been very lucky to have the licensee for Royal Ascot for off and on for the last 15 years. So we're recognised as the top hat specialists. We've had lots of celebrities. We've had Take That, we've had Anton Deck, lots and lots. Fashion has become so much of a feature. It's important to dress up for Ascot because you have a dress code, which you have to stick to. The racing is the paramount feature of the whole event. So it has the best horses from around the world that come and compete, and it's just so exciting to see.
So Kristian, can I try on one of these suits?
Definitely, let's put you in one of these beautiful suits and get you ready.
Kristian, I think I'm suited and booted, ready for Royal Ascot. Can you talk me through what I'm wearing?
Yeah, so you're wearing an antique silk top hat, that's about 125 years old. You're wearing a shirt and lovely tie, racing tie, actually one that we designed with bottles, top hats and racehorses on it, which is fun. And you're wearing a dove grey waistcoat, which is very classic to wear at weddings and Ascot. and trousers, which is triple check, plain socks and slip-on shoes. You need a nice colourful handkerchief in there, and you're good to go.
Can you take me through sort of some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to fashion at Royal Ascot?
Yeah, so the do's and don'ts of Royal Ascot is you can't go in a different colour outfit of this. You can now, for the first year and 2 years, wear a navy morning coat, but that means so you can wear any colour waistcoat, you can wear stripe or check trousers, you can't deviate from that. Slip-on shoes, can have a tassel, be a loafer, and the top hat has to be black or grey.
For something like this, for this full suited and booted outfit, how much in a region would you be spending?
The whole outfit without the top hat's about £800.
Well, I think I'm probably ready for the races. Kristian, thank you very much. I'm just going to go for a walk now.
Good.
Out there. Thank you.
Well, while I may not have made it out the door with that suit on in the end, there will be plenty of other flamboyant onlookers at Royal Ascot this week. I'll try my luck again next year.
Tom Forte there, the finest we've ever seen him, certainly on London Live. You're watching London Live News with Anthony Baxter. A reminder of our top story coming up after the break. Plus, what is a plant-friendly food? One of London's top chefs will be telling us more, and how you can have some for free this weekend. That is coming up after the break. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. Hello there, welcome back. Let's remind you of the main story this evening. New figures show more than £7 million worth of grants have been given to Londoners living in buildings suspected of having unsafe cladding and materials. Stats from City Hall show more than 1,000 tower blocks in the capital required so-called waking watches because of fire safety concerns. The grants aim to help residents replace wardens with alarms. London Live's Alicia Edwards gave me more details a short time ago.
Well, it's basically a fire safety watch, meaning that there's a trained member of staff on hand at all times, particularly overnight, keeping watch on the building, patrolling the floors and the outside of the building to make sure that everybody inside is safe. Now, the Waking Watch Relief Fund was set up to pay for the costs of installing technology, installing alarms, which would replace the need to have the people there watching the buildings. It was launched last year, and the idea is that these systems would actually be safer and obviously more efficient. The increase in having these wardens patrolling the buildings came in the wake of the Grenfell Tower fire 5 years ago, and since then there has been a significant increase in the number of buildings that are needing to have this level of security. The stats from City Hall, which we now have, show that 1,100 buildings in London have needed this level of patrolling, meaning that they either have the dangerous flammable cladding or other safety issues which put them at risk. Borough by borough, Tower Hamlets is by far the highest, with 165 buildings that come under this. Southwark's next with 94, Hackney have 87, and Greenwich also have 73 buildings, so they're the top four. And those numbers were released after a question to the Mayor by London Assembly member Anne Clark. This comes as just last month, London Fire Brigade Commissioner Andy Rowe said himself that it's extremely concerning the number of buildings that have these serious fire safety failings, being at more than 1,000, and that it's vitally important that people feel safe in their own homes and have certainty about leaving their building in the event of a fire or another emergency.
Let's move on. One or two other stories. Labour has called the government's plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda as a shambles after a court intervened in last night's first flight. The UK is still a member of the European Convention of Human Rights, although some Tory MPs have now called to break away following the ruling from Strasbourg. Speaking in the Commons, the Shadow Home Secretary said Priti Patel knew the policy was shameful. The Home Secretary said the government would not be deterred in doing the right thing. The Mayor also shared his reaction.
We have many Londoners who were refugees who've gone on to do great things. I think this policy from the government is callous, it is cruel, and as we discovered last night, it's unlawful. British courts have found this to be unlawful. The British Church has found this to be callous and cruel, and now the European Court of Human Rights. By the way, the convention was written by British lawyers. The court was set up by a British government. The genesis of the European Court and the European Convention comes from Winston Churchill, and I think this generation of Tory politicians should understand their history and our country's history. How is it value for money? Put aside the ethics and the humanity, for the Home Secretary to charter a flight for 7 people to go to Rwanda. How's that value for money? It appears only one person is going to go. The money spent for chartering the flight yesterday has been lost. There's money being expended in relation to defending this policy. That money could be spent far more sensibly doing other things.
Now, this weekend, a pop-up kitchen will be giving out free, environmentally friendly food. What is that, I hear you say? Well, the stall is part of the Great Exhibition Road Festival and will offer punters a chance to try so-called planet-friendly dishes. Henry has been speaking to Mike, a chef at BLANCH and Shock, to break down some of the buzzwords and phrases.
Some of the researchers from the Grantham Institute had been up at COP26 and noticed that there was a lot more information about the climate impact, really, of the different ingredients and different dishes that they were eating while they were at the conference. And they thought they'd like to translate that idea to something a bit more that the public could understand and could see how the dishes that they're also eating have that kind of impact. So they came up with the idea for a pop-up kitchen where we'll be present for the whole weekend, sampling our dishes and talking to people about the impact of those different ingredients. It's really translating that into, a lot of the research they're doing into a more public-facing and digestible, if you like, way of thinking about it.
So talk to me then about some of the planet-friendly dishes that will be available. So you're one of the chefs, of course. How will these meals be planet-friendly?
Yes, so there's a few different approaches we're taking, things we'd like to highlight. I'll run you through the menu very quickly. So there's also two other chefs, Annie Nichols and Sarah Booth, and we're all presenting a couple of dishes. So we have, on my part, a pearl barley salad with a kind of umami paste like a miso folded through that to give it a little bit of extra punch and savouriness. A beetroot dip with dill and fennel, presenting with some multigrain bread. Also a courgette dip, and both of those are quite adaptable. They could even be used as a sauce on pasta or rice. We have a dal made with nettles, so effectively a wild ingredient. We have akara bean fritters, so black bean fritters, and then finally walnut and potato kind of cookies. So quite a whole range of different styles of dish and sweet and savoury as well. Within that, there are a few things that we like to highlight, really. So on the one hand, trying to reduce consumption of meat and dairy, just slightly reducing that can have can help with the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that your own diet is effectively contributing, if that makes sense. Also, trying to go for generally more locally grown ingredients. So pretty much everything, apart from perhaps some of the spices that we're using, are ingredients that can be grown here. That, for the most part, it helps to reduce the emissions from transport of the ingredients. Also considering waste, so we're trying to give people a few different ways that they could use these recipes, whether they be, for example, those dips. They could also be sauces. So if you don't finish something up and you don't want to eat it immediately, then you could also use it in a different way in the kitchen, like on another meal as a sauce. Trying to encourage people really not to waste too much food, because there's so many problems associated with producing things and then not using them.
Yeah, it seems like you're just getting people to think in a slightly different way to do with their food. As you said there's a common misconception that people are wanted to go from their normal diet to just completely getting rid of meat, and I don't think that's the case. How important is it that we look in new directions, as you are trying to do with our food and our diets?
Yeah, I think it's great if everyone just becomes a little bit more mindful about that kind of thing. So it's very easy to assume that you have to completely overhaul your diet, but even just a small reduction would make a big difference if everybody is doing it. I think thinking about different ways in which you could replace meat for a couple of meals a week or maybe more. So looking at more pulses. We grow some wonderful beans in this country, for example. And if you bring, like in the case that I'm doing with the barley salad that I have as well, obviously not a pulse of grain, but if you find some other ways to bring a bit of that savouriness that you get with meat. So I found a miso that's made in Suffolk with UK beans, and folding that kind of thing through the grains brings a lot of that depth that you get with meatier dishes, for example.
You were involved in a cuisine challenge at Imperial College last year as well, I believe.
Yeah, so it's another exciting kind of project that Imperial have been creating, really. There's a course, a design course called Innovation Design Engineering, and I was helping, along with Annie, who's involved in the Great Exhibition Road Festival event. We were helping some of the students on that course to develop dishes and presentations of interesting ingredients, and for them to think about how food can be an interesting way to get ideas across that they have in their design practice, really. So I've always been keen to think of food as something that allows you to explain bits of history, anthropology, science, geography. It's all kind of there within food. So it's been great working with Imperial, who have a very kind of broad understanding of how we can communicate those sorts of ideas and bring food into design in that way.
Well, that pop-up kitchen will be open this weekend at Imperial College between midday and 6 p.m. Stay with us. Still to come before 7. Charlie Kondo on his latest play, which involves a very fictional story involving the Queen and a Portaloo. I'll leave you with that thought for the next 5 minutes, and we'll explain more after the break. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. Hello there, welcome back to the final part of tonight's show. Now, during the Jubilee, you may have heard the story of the American tourists who met the Queen on a hike in Scotland. They failed to realise just who they'd come across. This scenario makes the plot of this next play almost plausible. The Throne tells the very fictional tale of a school teacher who gets trapped in a toilet with the Queen. Tanya has been speaking to Mary Roscoe and Corrie's Charlie Kondo, who star in the play.
These two people come together, these unlikely characters stuck in a place together, and they end up having some very interesting conversations about the monarchy, the state of the world, and about kind of emotional stuff too. It's sort of about the relationship between the two of them, wouldn't you say?
Yes, and I guess a lot of the fun, of course, is that people don't see the Queen ever off guard.
Mm.
She's either meeting people and it's very formal and doesn't last very long, or she's giving a public address. And so here we see her trapped for over an hour with a stranger who she has to get along with, and she can because the Queen has met everybody and more people than anyone else in the world probably. But even so, she's not been put in a situation where she's vulnerable or a bit out of control.
Yeah, she's on a throne in a scenario that she perhaps is not that familiar with. Mary, you actually play the Queen. We've seen a lot of her recently because she's been out and about having a lovely time celebrating the Jubilee. She's usually quite a private person, and as you say, we don't see her. We always see her in the same light and in the same kind of role. Has it been a bit easier, or has it kind of influenced your prep? Being able to see her a lot more at the moment?
Yes. In fact, Tanya, it has been so helpful because not only have we seen her out and about a bit, but they're showing the most amazing documentaries. I don't know if you know, but there's a one called Elizabeth the Unseen Queen, where she has offered up unseen home videos from her childhood, and she narrates it, and it's incredibly moving. I mean, whether you're a royalist or not, I think you can't help but appreciate this huge span of life and what an incredible journey she went on to be crowned Queen at age 25. I mean, that's only 4 years older than my own daughter, and I look at my daughter. Oh my goodness. What an incredible... I know she was groomed for it in some ways, of course, but even so, that's a massive responsibility for a young woman.
Yeah, it's... Charles and William, they're going to take that role on well into their 40s, 50s, 60s. They've almost, they've been able to live, I don't know if it's ever a normal life, but live a bit more of an independent life and not have as much responsibility. So it's interesting that that's what you picked up on and have sort of, I guess, brought that into the role in a way. Charlie, tell me more about the role of Derek, the cheeky chap who's not kept to royal protocol. I was going to say Portaloo there, because that's exactly what happens. He's headed into the Queen's Portaloo.
Well, that's right. He's a bit of a rebel, and he's a Republican, which is part of the problem with the two of these people meeting, is that he doesn't believe in the royal family, and he's a real socialist, and he's kind of a bit of a depressed, middle-aged man who's been teaching for 25 years, and he's very intelligent and always thought he was going to go off and do wonderful things, and has ended up teaching in this Sync comprehensive school, and he's a bit sort of, feels a bit let down with life, and I suppose he goes on a bit of a journey, doesn't he, by meeting the Queen, and he comes out kind of, I don't want to
we mustn't
ruin things, but he comes out a changed man.
Yes, I think they both have an effect on each other.
Mm.
I think that's really an important thing. Otherwise, it's because it's a comedy. It can get quite serious at times, but it's got a playful side to it, and it's got a sense of, as in all good comedies, that something is changed and something grows by the end of it. There's a sort of fulfillment of something.
Yeah.
I know that you're both in rehearsals at the moment, and I don't want to give too much away, or I don't know how much you can tell me, but part of it is set in a Portaloo. What does that look like on stage? You can't fit a full theatre of people into a Portaloo, so how have you done it?
Well, we haven't yet because we're still in rehearsals and we haven't seen the set. We get into the theatre when at the end of next week or something. Sometime.
I think it's fair to say though it will be a rather grand Portaloo.
Yeah, I mean pretty much the entire play. Pretty much the entire play takes place inside this Portaloo. So it'll be quite a fancy one for the Queen. But essentially, they are stuck in the toilet.
The Throne is on at the Charing Cross Theatre later this month. Finally, let's tell you a little bit about this. 3 weeks' worth of events celebrating local talent across Wandsworth is underway as part of the area's Art Fringe. The 2022 programme includes more than 150 moments from comedy, live performance and some site-specific surprises, according to organisers. They've been speaking to Henry.
We want to create a community, so we're about creating a community of artists and then a community of Wandsworth enjoying the artists and the art that's on offer. So we really encourage the artists to get to know each other and to work together as much as possible. So we'll sort of introduce during our sort of planning process. We help the artists to get to know each other and introduce each other where we think that collaborations might work well.
So there's lots on offer for people to visit over the next few weeks. Maybe what are some of the standout groups or people that visitors can come see?
Well, we've got a really exciting dance programme this year. We're shining a spotlight on our new dance quarter. Royal Academy of Dance have got a new building, beautiful new building. So we've got lots of events happening there and around there. So we've got a dance weekend next weekend. So one of the days is in York Gardens, which is near Royal Academy, where we've got the London Butu Dance Company, Halloumi Dance, we've got Magpie Dance, we've got the PCDC's Royal Dance Hall Flamingos, who are amazing. They're a group of seniors who dress as flamingos and dance. And then the following day we're at British Ballet Organisation, BBO Dance. So yeah, we've got a massive dance programme there. And we've got loads of stuff for families. So we've got Meg in the Toy Shop is a musical adventure for ages 3 to 7, bringing libraries. So they're touring libraries around the borough. And then Jellyfish Theatre returning with their Wagon of Dreams. They're touring Wandsworth more parks and housing estates. So if we, as well as wanting people to come to venues, we bring the art to people as well. So we say that there's always something within 10 minutes of your walk anywhere. We've got something all across the borough happening.
When a lot of people hear the word Fringe Festival, people immediately think of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. But as London's key Fringe Festival, how popular has it become over the last few years?
We think it's been really embraced by the borough. It's definitely been embraced by the artists in the borough and the artists that a lot of London artists come to the borough for the festival period as well. So yeah, it's been embraced really well, and loads of families come to our events. They come. We met a woman yesterday, and she'd been to like 4 events yesterday, so she had 3 children, so they needed some occupying. But she'd bobbed around to a few of our events that were happening in parks and on the high streets and stuff yesterday. So she'd already been to 3 things. So that's what we want people to do, is just to see this particular time as a great time to just go out and about and find something new and something fun to do. So yeah, we just want everyone in Wandsworth, and we want people to come to Wandsworth as well. So it's something for everybody.
Yeah, it's funny you say it's something for everyone. You mentioned that there's so many different venues as well, across parks, libraries, and coming to you as well. What do you hope people take away from it if they see one thing, or as you said there, go to multiple things in a day? What are you hoping that try something new, experience something, learn something, or just have fun? What are you hoping for?
We've got a little bit of a how-to fringe. So we say, something that something you're familiar with, go to that. Go to something local, something you're familiar with. Try something new. Fringe is that, not not everything's going to be amazing, but like go and have fun. Just go to something totally out of the box, something that you would not normally go to, and you'll be surprised. And then just explore and experiment, basically. So, you know, we want people to sort of go to more than one thing. Go and just, you know, use that time. You know, it's 3 weekends, 17 days. Just go to do as many events as you possibly can.
You can fill your boots with the Wandsworth Art Fringe all the way up until the 26th of June. A final check on the weather for you. It's pretty warm out there. A little bit of cloud around this evening, but overnight lows 15 or 16 degrees. That's quite sticky. Tomorrow, more in the way of sunshine. Once again, we're looking at highs of 27, possibly 28 degrees. That will be the warmest day of the year so far. Friday, the peak of this warmth. Temperatures possibly could reach 34 degrees, that is over 90 in Fahrenheit, and edging close to a record for June. That is all from the news team this evening. We'll be back at 6 tomorrow. From all of us here, have a lovely evening.